Hey everybody, we'll get started in just a minute. Thanks. Hi, well, it looks like it's 2 o'clock on the nose, so I'm going to get going and we'll give people a chance to jump in here. I would love to hear where you're calling in from. I saw a bunch of names on there this time of folks that I do not know, and it's always nice to see that people are calling in or dialing in, I guess, whatever it's called, from different places. So, hi to Allison from Western Colorado, and that's actually where I live. I live in Mount Crested Butte, Colorado. It's an interesting time right now because we're getting nice weather, and then it's supposed to drop down to 40 and do some snowing here in a little while. And I guess when you live at 9,000 feet, I live right on the side of the ski hill, Crested Butte Mountain Resort. And hi, Chris from Seattle. And when you get a nice 50-degree day like we're having now in April, we kind of celebrate it, which is a little bit weird for people in other places. So thanks for being here. I would still love to hear where you're from if you haven't filled in the chat. So please do that when you get a second. And let's get started. This workshop is called Leading Virtual Teams in Transition. I think we're all in this big transition right now, and we're moving from working in workplaces where we're used to being around other people, and now we're having to do all this stuff remotely and using cams and Zoom and all those other interfaces out there to try to keep those face-to-face parts going. And we'll talk about why that's important. So today we're going to focus on leadership strategies to use with your teams to kind of keep them connected. And this is about leadership, and we're going to talk about leadership maybe in a different way than you've heard it before. I want to say thank you for being here for everyone that's on with us today, because I have fun hosting these and I appreciate you being here. You know, one of the transitions I'm making is that I'm not doing much work with live audiences right now. And it's a real bummer because I really do enjoy working with those live audiences. Make sure that my volume is turned on okay. Everybody hearing me okay? I think you would probably have told me if you couldn't hear me. So I'm going to make sure that I toggle on my volume. So thanks for being here. So I appreciate it. And I wanted to say thank you too to our sponsor for today. The Gunnison Country Chamber of Commerce has sponsored the first few of these webinars that have come out, virtual trainings. And I want to say thank you to Celeste over the Gunnison Country Chamber of Commerce for stepping up and sponsoring these, recognizing that there's a need in our local community and also in our other larger communities. So if you know me, my name is Anthony Poponi, and you'll hear more about the courses and tools that I'm calling Focus on the 40. And we'll go into what that 40 means here in just a little bit. And I got to tell you, that cocktail looks pretty appealing right now. As our friend Jimmy Buffett says, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. All right, so let's talk about our agenda for today. So first, Houston, we have a problem. Yes, the virtual workplace creates new challenges and team dynamics. I get that. But the same issues that existed in the workplaces when we were all getting together in workplaces, those issues still existed, and they're just being exacerbated a little bit now more. So we do have a problem, and we'll talk about the significance of that problem to you and to your teams and to your workplaces. Two, we're going to talk about the PERMA model of well-being. The PERMA model of well-being comes from researchers in the field of positive psychology. It's a well-vetted model, a really great theory of supporting well-being theory. There's free recordings on my website diving deeper into the PERMA model. We're just going to talk on it lightly today. Number three, we're going to do 5 tools, and we're going to walk through those today that you can start using right now. We want to help keep your teams connected, communicating, and motivated. And I want to give you stuff that's tangible and actionable and stuff you can use now. And I want to have a little fun with you today. And so there's going to be opportunities to do that. And I hope you'll lean in on those opportunities because we can enjoy humor and we need humor right now. So first of all, I got to tell you that you're a superhero. And you're not a superhero in the trite way that we tell everyone, like, hey, you're special and here's your participation award. I'm going to show you how you're a superhero right now using 2 simple data points. All right, and when you see me put this up on the screen, it's chat me up. It's an opportunity for you to open that chat box. So if you go up to the top there where you put in where you are from, just drop that on there. And when you see that today, try to engage. I would love for you to stay engaged with me. I'd like to hear your feedback. So please do, stay focused on what we're doing here and engage with me. I love it. So superhero. I've done a lot of research, gathering information from sources throughout the known universe on the characteristics of heroes. And I've been watching documentaries like Abraham Lincoln, Independence Day, and Batman. And all we really need to know about you are two things to determine what it is that makes you a hero. And here's what it is. It's super simple. We need to know your first name and your last name, okay? And so that's why today I'm excited to introduce you to my alter ego. But go ahead and use the chat box right now to drop in your hero name. I want to hear who you guys are. And you can maybe be thinking about those. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me. Let's hear what your hero names are. Steelmaster. Joseph, you and your partner have the same initials, don't you? Steel Beast. Dr. Hornet, Captain Master, Mighty Knight. That's a good one. A knight transformed into time. Mighty Ninja. Good. Thank you, Shannon. All right, so we've got some good answers in there. So keep those superheroes ideas in mind. And this is me with Anthony and Poponi. I get to be Captain Falcon, and I'm the irreverent intimidator with my trusted sidekick, Skyrat the Power Pigeon. Skyrat's a precocious little urban teenager full of sarcasm and one-liners. And while those aren't necessarily superhero traits, he's really good with technology, which is my mortal weakness. And he's really good at self-regulation. And if you know me, you know that's a weakness as well, because I believe in the saying that everything in moderation, including moderation. So we've got your names now, and I appreciate you throwing those in there. And if you've seen in our last trainings, we had some fun with these, and this is always the approach to keep my stuff lighthearted and fun. In our last training, we used the chat box to figure out what our band name was, our rock band. So I was Rancid Gods for that one, and then our rapper name, using this same complex algorithm, we figured out that my rap name was Lethal Jelly. And that was a pretty fun one. I had some fun with Lethal Jelly and some photoshopping, and maybe I'm not great at photoshopping. That's okay. But I want to introduce some, fun into our workplaces. It's, solid a practice to have humor in your workplace at normal times, and probably especially important now. So keep those LOLs coming. So we talked about Houston and there being a problem, and as I said, we really do have a problem, and this isn't the problem that I'm talking about. Although if you were in space and on the moon, having your nose itch while you're in one of those outfits is probably problematic. So we have a bigger problem than space itches. We have this real big disruption to our normal routine. We're all off our normal routine right now. Our routines are good for us, right? They help us feel productive. They're constructed in ways to help us meet our social obligations, our work obligations, our family obligations. And those routines help balance our stress. We build routines around being productive and meeting all those needs, and we feel good when we do that. So now we're doing new routines, and the resulting discomfort that comes from that, and stress and anxiety, maybe even some toilet paper shortage-induced panic, right? I mean, we're all seeing how people are behaving these days. And so it's, really understanding stress is important. And one of my favorite researchers on stress looked at brainwave patterns, but he was barred from doing further human research, and you'll see why, because you've seen some of his work. Yes, here he is, Dr. Bunsen. He's run a series of experiments on stress on this poor little beaker whose hair always seems to be on end. Meep. And so Dr. Bunsen can't be trusted because he's under the influence of, internal forces. And some say he's guided by an internal hand we can't see. LOLs, anyone? So is stress good for us or bad for us? And let's talk about that. It's both, right? And Dr. Kelly McGonigal has done a lot of work on stress and about our mindset around stress, and that if we think stress is bad for us, it's actually bad for us. If we think stress is good for us, then we recognize the value of stress, and stress can be good for us. And so your relationship with stress is really important. Her book is called The Upside of Stress. It's a great book. So here's what stress is really doing is, stress is a motivator for action. And your brain signals you with emotions and gives you an emotional sort of thumbs up if you're doing something that's really good for your survival. And it tells you to move towards those things. It feels good when we're doing things that are helping our survival. So that's the positive side. And our brain gives us this thumbs down signal of like a negative emotion when we're doing things that are bad for our survival. Now, we have to try to understand that our brain doesn't always understand the complexities of our world, because our brain hasn't changed much in about 200,000 years, and the world has changed in that time dramatically. So the things that were really threatening our survival before aren't as significant of a threat now. So our brain's saying, hey, good, move towards these things. These are good for us. Ooh, this is bad. And I'm going to make you feel stressed out about this. And I want you to do something different because I perceive this as being bad for your survival. So the problem is, like, right now, this is a situation we're just not used to, right? And so we're living in this new normal. We're worried about our aging parents. We're seeing people in our community stressed and struggling and losing their jobs, and seeing economies disrupted. We don't know what to do about this. This is not something that's normal to us in the form of this pandemic, right? And so we carry anxiety over what we can and what we can't control in these situations. And so let's talk about that a little bit, because too often this panic, these things that we can't control, puts us in fight or flight mode. And just like stress, fight or flight mode has its value, right? It's kept us alive, and it's meant to keep us alive. And when we're in fight or flight mode, our body responds, right? Our body does things like increasing our blood flow and narrowing our focus and shutting off non-essential functions that are typically needed in the long term, but not needed in the short term, right? We don't need, as a gazelle in the savannah, we don't need to worry about the infection in our little leg if we're worried about surviving being attacked by a lion. And we're programmed, a mammalian brain is very similar to that of most other mammalians. So here's the problem, is that when we're living in these stressful times, that we are living with that higher blood pressure and this reduced focus. And one of the big things is reducing our ability to connect with others. Now, this is more pronounced typically in men that have more fight or flight, and in females, we call that tend and befriend, because there's this programming in our brains up here that generally led women to connect a little bit more and nurture those relationships in times of stress. We can turn that off and turn that on as we need to. So we can also catastrophize events, and we'll do modules later on optimism and learning how to be more optimistic and really challenging some of your negative thinking. And this all comes from positive psychology. And there's superheroes out there that can make the worst out of everything, right? Like Anxiety Girl, right? Able to jump to the worst conclusion in a single bound. Maybe not the best of all superhero traits. So if you want to know more about stress and anxiety and how to harness them, stay tuned. We'll keep talking about that, because I know it's something that's on everyone's mind. So leadership is needed more now than ever. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can lead and understand the fact that people are stressed out around you. All right, so chat me up. Get ready to chat me up. And there's an opportunity here for you to give me on a scale of, well, here's the scale. On a scale of cool as a cucumber to I'm Anxiety Girl, what's your stress level right now? Go ahead and drop that in the chat. I would love to hear it. My high school nickname. Cool as a cucumber or Anxiety Girl, Chris? Good. Thanks for the LOLs on some of those jokes there, D. So where are you guys at right now? Yeah, so we can use that as a numeric scale, as 10 is Anxiety Girl, being super high anxiety, and 1 being, cool and calm. And cucumber vodka, that's a good idea, Joseph. So people are saying, a little bit stressed. Some are more towards Anxiety Girl, some right in the middle, right? And we're all in different places, right? Some of us are, have jobs that are stable and they haven't changed a lot. That may not be the norm for a lot of folks. Some of us are have high stress because we're just dealing with this new norm and trying to save people's jobs and trying to save our companies. And some of us don't have jobs, right? And so there's a huge amount of stress that can come from that as well. And for folks in the public speaking realm, this guy right here, my world has changed completely. Now I am highly optimistic. We'll talk about my character strengths later, and it's been really helpful for me. Well, so pay attention to your anxiety, right? And recognize that that's also influencing how you behave right now and how you're going to be affecting other people. And that's a big part of what we'll be talking about, is not just, you, but also how you can lead yourself and then lead other people. We'll come back to that. All right, so here's a cool image that I really love, and you'll have access to this image later. But there's a big difference between the stuff that's inside that circle in the middle, things that you can control, your attitude, not paying attention to reactionary news and news that's really meant to trigger us, right? Paying attention to doing social distancing to protect yourself and your family and other people in your community, finding fun things to do at home, right? Those are all things you can control. And on the outside of that box, well, those are things that you can't control. And so sometimes you just have to let go of those things. And I'll tell you that by focusing on the things you can control in the middle there, you're triggering positive neurochemicals when you can recognize those moments in your life where you have the ability to control those moments. On the outside of that box, those things are in the, the darker color there, things that you can't control. If you can let go of those things and recognize you can't control those, you can also give yourself a boost of positive emotions. And we talked about positive emotions in earlier parts of our training. So there's, trauma is something that we're familiar with experiencing. Some of us experienced the financial trauma that came from the recession, now over a decade ago. And when we're familiar with trauma, those that are informed by trauma know that trauma is actually an opportunity for growth. That sounds weird, right? Because I said growth. And when we think about this acronym, most people have heard this. This is post-traumatic stress disorder. And what they've shown in science, and they've done this research with civilians and with the military extensively, that after traumatic events, that we have this amazing growth phase that comes after that, right? And we habituate to the new norm of our life really well in most situations. So if you're really struggling right now and you're recognizing that things are really different and really hard and really challenging, recognize that there is a positive on the other side of this. We just have to give it some time. We've been through that before. We've all experienced trauma, right? Most of you have experienced either a divorce or the ending of a relationship, or you've lost someone in your life, or you've had financial struggles before. And you can see that you made it through all those situations, and you're going to make it through this one as well. So stay focused on the positive. Okay. So that's post-traumatic growth. You can look that up in a really great book called Flourish by Dr. Marty Seligman. He talks about that extensively in their work with the military. So what they say is that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And if that's the case, well, some of us probably really do have superpowers at this point. So I'm suggesting that you go on Amazon and order yourself a cape and maybe a mask, and you can have an alter ego with some heroic attributes, because we've been through stuff together and we recognize that, that we've had to survive those moments. So what we're talking about today is, and I alluded to this before, is we're talking about you. And on the left-hand side of your screen here is about really knowing yourself. And through the work that we do with any of the PERMA model, which I'll introduce in a moment, we get to really understand ourselves, right? We really get to understand what makes us tick and what really makes us fulfilled and happy. And then we can lead ourselves, and we can say, all right, I am actually a very social person, and this social distancing is really painful for me. So how do we find ways to connect with other people? And we'll talk about those sort of examples today. So you can know yourself, and then you can lead yourself. And then when you have tools, then you can lead other people as well. And I think it's really important to point out, really important to say that you don't have to be a supervisor or a manager to be a leader. Everyone gets the opportunity to be a leader, right? You can be a leader in your community. You can be a leader in your family. Excuse me. You can be a leader in your workplace, even if you're not the one that is managing and supervising people, right? So we can lead in one of two ways. And those two ways are intentional or accidental. And those are two very different styles of leadership, right? Accidental leadership is reactive, and in times of chaos, sometimes all you can do is react, and that's okay. But what you should be doing is trying to build skills to be able to deal with situations that come up. Intentional leaders are proactive and prepared and equipped with tools to meet those challenges that are out there. And so we're going to give you those tools so you can be more of an intentional leader than an accidental one. And of course, we all learn on the job, and ideally we learn from our mistakes, and that's a form of leadership as well. So use the tools. You're going to get tools from me today. You're going to have access to other tools that I have out there other than this training, and I'm excited to share those with you, and I hope you'll use them. But you have to use them, because knowledge without application, well, it's not really anything, right? Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only potential. Potential power, and action is power. So you've got to take what you learned today and you've got to put it into action. And that's the idea, is to making these easy and actionable for you and to share with others, and they can make them actionable in their own lives as well. Because you need to share the tools, right? So if all your if all your team has for tools is hammers, then everything looks like a nail. And I love that saying. So we're going to provide you with new tools so that you have new solutions to the problems that are in front of you, the challenges that exist. And use me, because I'm a tool. Wait, I didn't mean it like that. You can LOL me if you want on that. So let's talk about that problem, and this is a big number. So, Houston, do we really have a problem? Oh, thank you for the LOLs on that, everyone. So, do we really have a problem? Well, we do. And we had these problems before the disruption, and they're probably just a little bit worse now, because this face-to-face, lack of face-to-face time with people in a real, tangible 3D way is really different. Before, back in the old days, 2019 and even the beginning part of 2020, teams were still not functioning at their full potential. They were only functioning at about 60%, and this comes from the great work of Giant and the Five Voices team. And why? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and trust is huge. So trust plays a huge part in allowing people to really express themselves and to share their vulnerabilities and take risks and be innovators. You need to find the right people, right? And you have to put the right people in the right roles, and then you need to build a team that's a right mix of voices. So I mentioned voices, and I just wanted to introduce this to you because it's a really great series of trainings. It's called Five Voices. It's leadership styles, and their approach is to transform team communication. It's really great content. It's really palatable. It's like Myers-Briggs. It uses the same approach as Myers-Briggs, but instead of 16 personality types, it really just distills it down to 5 types. So you can really have a great way to have communication within your team about which one of these styles that you might be. So that's one we won't really touch on too much today, but I am a certified trainer in that. And it's a fantastic tool for really celebrating the differences and the unique leadership styles that everyone has, because everyone is a leader in their own way. It's about really celebrating that. And when we talk about that 60% potential, the gap there, that 40% that's kind of unfulfilled, is really not tapping into the full potential of your team. So making sure that folks are in those right roles and they can contribute fully and they feel heard and they feel invested in what they're doing. And that's an engagement, and that's one part of our PERMA model. Okay, so get your chat boxes open because I've got another something for you. Quick question for you on engagement. So let's get those chat boxes open. I'm going to open up mine. So here we are. Hi, Laura. Welcome back. Right, the TP one is a pretty good one, right? You can't control that one. There is a really funny meme out there right now on it said January, everything was hunky-dory and rainbows, and and then we get into April and people are having to use coffee filters as toilet paper. So we're becoming a little barbaric. All right, so here's your question. All right, so what percentage of employees are disengaged at work? And so the question is, what's the percentage? And so is it A, 30%, B, 20%, C, 50%, or D, 70%? And this comes from research from the Gallup Corporation. The Gallup Corporation loves positive psychology. They've been involved in that from the beginning, or they were one of the first. So I see a 30 from Marcy. Hi, Marcy. I see a 50 from Allison. I see an A, a 30, and then I see a C, a B, a D. So we've got a mix of stuff all over here. Give everybody else a few more seconds. Good, so we've got a mix on them there, okay? So let's see what the actual answer is. The answer is D, and it's 70%. Let's see if my little noise maker. Look at me using technology. I don't need you, Skyrat. So if you answered 70%, you get a free high five. There it is right there, and a complimentary virtual training in the future from me. And so it's, really, when we think about this number, like what's the largest contributor to the 70% of disengagement? It's really supervisors and leaders, right? And managers, right? And so that's a really big deal about being effective at leading people. And, we have this conversation all the time about people getting promoted and from one thing that they were really good at, moving from sales into managing a sales team. And those are two really different skill sets. And we have to honor those differences and build the leadership traits that are needed to manage those teams. So, 70% is a big deal. And that relationship with the leader in your company and the leadership in your company and the people that manage you or supervise you, that's like the number one reason why people actually leave their jobs. And it's all about those relationships. And that was a big part of what we talked about in the past. Okay, so if you're a manager, you might want to start taking better notes because 70% is a big number. So there's good news, right? And when we engage our staff and engage our employees and get them to use their strengths, and we're going to talk a lot about strengths today. Apparently, it's a word that I have a hard time saying, but strengths are really important. And when we do that, people are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their work. And so think about the significance of really upping that. And when you provide people that opportunity to use their strengths in their lives in general, you'll find that they're 9 times more likely to be flourishing. We'll talk about flourishing in just a moment. So, we have to recognize that people have gifts. We have to establish an environment and a culture where people can use those gifts, and then we have to be able to lead. And leadership isn't, it isn't always about kind of being dictatorial. It's about lifting people up. LOL. So, when we think about leadership styles, I mean, technically, this person is being lifted up, and I don't know that that's a leadership style that we should replicate in the workplace, because it probably would result in some issues with HR. So today, when we think about leadership, thank you for the LOLs, we're going to focus on the 40% of what we can control. And so I want you to think about not living your life half-glassed. And we're going to focus on the part that we have the ability to control. That's partly mindset. It's in our actions, right? And our actions are a big part of our mindset. Now, when we talk about focusing on the 40s, some people always ask, do you mean like 40s? And I was like, no, not these 40s. And though they're cheaper than my course, these 40-ounce beverages don't really have a great track record for transformation, at least not in a good way. So they can also result in tactical errors like this. I really need my phone to probably do that for me time to time, and not just when I've had a beverage or two. All right, so we're not going to focus on 40 ounces of malted beverages right now, though I am hosting my Get Happy Hour presentation later this month, and I would love for you to attend. Get Happy Hour is hosted during happy hour, beverage-friendly introduction to focus on the 40 process. Fun, lively, entertaining, meant to be fun. So pay attention for that. It'll come out later this month, and I'll be sharing the date with you via email. So what do we mean, excuse me for the cough, but what do we mean about focusing on the 40? Well, this comes from the research of Dr. Sonia Lubomirsky, who has some really great books out there on happiness. And really what she says is that 50% of our happiness is genetic. And that's that part in the middle there on your screen. And this is really important, is that we have life circumstances that we think create significant happiness for us, but they only really contribute 10%. What do I mean by life circumstances? When we get married. That happiness uptick changes for us for 9 months to 2 years. And then we kind of come back to our normal set point, right? That genetic set point that we have. Life circumstances like getting a new job or moving to a new city or buying a new TV or getting a new car. They do affect our happiness, but it's fleeting and it doesn't have the permanent effect that the 40 really has for us. So my content always focuses on the 40% that we can control. And by pursuing those small everyday activities, you really get to focus on the things you have direct control over every day so that you can get out of those routines and ruts that may not be serving you and your happiness well. And the science backing all this stuff is really strong. Positive psychology is a very well vetted program. So where can we use all these focus on the 40 tools? Well, you can use them in all 3 phases of your life. We can use these tools at work, and that's a big part of what we're focusing on today. But you can use these same tools and techniques at your home and in your community and your social settings. So we've talked about this at a high level, and I've mentioned PERMA a few times. And so let's actually talk about PERMA. Positive psychology researchers developed the PERMA model that is part of well-being theory. And when we focus on flourishing, the really full, content, satisfied life that we have, it's because we've supported each part of PERMA. And for some of us, certain parts of it are way more important and more challenging for us to achieve. And so let's talk about PERMA quickly. Now, PERMA is really different from PERM-A. And these are some PERMs, and I got to tell you that PERMA is good, and PERMs maybe weren't so good, but I got to tell you, David Hasselhoff, I think he's rocking that one out pretty good. So what does PERMA stand for? Well, think about it in these 5 parts, right? The first is positive emotion. And there's a recording of this module that introduces PERMA a little more fully and positive emotions in more detail available. It's on my website at anthonypoponi.com/webinars. You can just find that through the virtual trainings that are on there. E, that second part of PERMA, is for engagement. So remember, your employees are 6 times more likely to be engaged if they're using their strengths, and their employees are 9 times more likely to flourish if they're using their strengths. So think about how important that is to your team, just from an engagement standpoint, right? So R stands for relationships, and this was our last module that we talked about last week. Other people matter, and other people matter in so many ways in our lives, but their relationships and positive relationships specifically really are everything and possibly the most important part of PERMA. So M is meaning. The formula for meaning is strengths, and we'll talk about strengths today, and then being in service to others and using those strengths in service to others gives us meaning in our lives, and that's a really important part of well-being theory. And A is accomplishments. So we'll touch on recognition and motivation today. and why they're linked together. So those are going to be a way to address accomplishment and celebrating that in your workplace, in your home, and in your community as well. Okay, so remember, everything we talk about today, about knowing yourself, about leading yourself, and understanding what parts that you need to be focused on, and then being able to give that to other people. Because when you can do that and you can understand yourself and you can understand the person across from you, then you can help them and allow them to lead themselves by giving them tools. All right, so let's talk about our first tool. Use your strengths. So hopefully by now you've taken the VIA classification of strengths survey. If you haven't, it's in the email that you got from me when you registered. It's a free survey. If you don't have that email, I can get that to you afterwards. It's, I think, 96 questions, and they're really great questions. They're a little bit repetitive, and that's on purpose. This has been tested rigorously. It's 5 million people have used it in every country on the entire planet. It's been developed by the folks at Positive Psychology. They're clinical psychologists, and they've tried and tested and came up with this model that was developed by Chris Peterson and Marty Seligman to help us with this, to understand that there are strengths and we all have them, and that's the beauty of this model. So there's 24 character strengths, and we all have our own mix with our top 5 strengths. When you do the survey, you'll get top 5 listed up there. And we call those signature strengths. So if you hear me talking about the top 5, or if I say signature strengths, we're focused on the ones that are at the top. And we won't go too much into the science behind what the strengths are and what they are not, but I should tell you that just because something is at the bottom of your list doesn't mean it's a weakness. It's still a strength that you possess. It just isn't one that comes maybe easiest to you. And when you're using those top 5 signature strengths, it should feel effortless, it should feel energizing and natural and authentic. And you'll notice that in yourself when you're doing that. And I notice it myself, and we'll talk about my own experiences with this. And again, this applies to work and home and community, and you may use really different signature strengths more frequently at home versus using those at work. And you may tap into different strengths that are lower use at work that you use more frequently at home. It's natural, and I think it's really important to pay attention to the fact that we have access to these and we use them differently at different times. So when you when you know them, you don't necessarily need to be using those top 5 strengths all the time. The science says that that's not as important as a really strong ratio. A ratio of like 70% of the time is ideal. And again, think about how that applies to work and home and your family life as well. And no job is perfect, right? And if we can just make sure that our job is somewhere in this 70% to 30% ratio, then it's good. And if we don't have that and we feel like this ratio is really off when we examine how much we're using our strengths, then look at changing either the role within your company or changing the company or changing your job through a process of job crafting, which is a changing about how you do your job, and that increases discretionary effort from employees. It's a really powerful tool to use with people, but requires trust. So having a mix of strengths on your team is also really important. Like what good is a team full of goalies? Well, it's not very much good at all. And I miss hockey, and I play hockey here in the valley that I live in, and I watch a good bit of hockey. And if you know much about hockey, and even if you don't, you know that these are all goalies, right? These are all the netminders. And a team full of all goalies isn't going to score many goals. They may stop a lot of goals, but they're not going to win a lot of games. So we have to celebrate the diversity of our teams and really look at embracing the fact that people are different. Now let's go back to talking about strengths, because some strengths are interpersonal. Some strengths are really things that you use to develop relationships with other people. Like for me, humor and kindness are 2 of my signature strengths. Those are interpersonal in most cases, right? They're affecting other people, although I do like to make myself laugh. And some of these are right? They're intrapersonal, which means they're within you and they're indirectly experienced by people. Like gratitude for me is one that one of my signature strengths, and I use that a lot, but it's maybe not always recognized by other people because it's more of a personal process of being grateful for my own life. All right, so let's look at what those 24 strengths are in case you haven't seen them all in one spot. What I love about the strengths, and even the 5 Voices program that I talked about before, is that by using the strengths indicators and some of these strengths tools that I'm going to share with you today, is that it gives us a common language, right? And it gives us the ability to celebrate the uniqueness of the people across from us, and it gives us a framework of how to do that, right? Because it's not something that comes naturally to everyone. So you probably know your signature strengths at this point, and we'll use mine as an example for just talking through how it affects my own life, right? So one of my signature strengths is hope and optimism. And if you want to talk about a strength that is really important for me right now, is being able to look at how disrupted my industry is and thinking that in the future it's going to be different. And I'm doing things now, like going virtual as we are today, to really change the model for my business. And so I'm hopeful that it will be successful. And I know it's going to be good for me in the future when we start doing live events with people face to face. Okay, second one, gratitude. I am grateful for my life. I have a lot of things to be grateful for. The number one thing that the happiest people share as a strength is gratitude. So if you don't know my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gratitude exercise, I'd be happy to share that with you. It's a very simple technique that just really makes me view life through a lens of gratefulness, because there's so much to be grateful for. Kindness is one of my strengths. I love helping other people. I really love being of service to others. That's why this career is so fulfilling for me. And I should say that I don't call it a career, I call it a calling. I'm supposed to be doing this with my time, and I really love what I'm doing passionately. Social intelligence is also one of mine, and I think that that's a really important technique to have, especially in the work that I do. You know, trying to pay attention to the cues people are giving you, paying attention to words, phrases, sensory acuity, nonverbal communication, thinking about how my decisions and behaviors affect other people, how to make other people mesh even better together, and that's what all these tools are about. And of course, my final signature strength, my biggest one, though it's in really low resolution, is humor. And I use humor all the time. I try to have fun doing what I'm doing. You know, I don't think there's any reason that work can't be play at the same time. And so I try to blend those together. And so, you know, I think I'm funny. Let's see if I get some LOLs. I am sometimes funny. Thank you, Laura. That's very candid of you. Allison, hit me up in the end here at the when we get done with the presentation, and I'll share the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with you when we have time at the end there. I'd love to send you the gratitude exercise, Allison. It's we'll walk through it at the end, so stick around to the end. Okay, so you know, I only have one fan. Thank you, Shannon, for pointing that out. That kind of hurts my feelings. Okay, so what we're going to do is, if you've done the survey now, I'd love for you to share one. And here's the context for what I would like for you to share in the chat. Is what's one signature strength that you have that's really good for leadership, and how are you using that? I could say that humor is one that I could use for leadership. Kindness is one I could use for leadership. Gratitude for the people that I work with as a form of leadership. Social intelligence, obviously. I mean, most of these have a interpersonal dynamic for me. You didn't get the survey. Dee, look in your email and you'll have it in the link. And if you don't get it, I'll give it to you in the chat box at the end. But you can just go back to that image of the 24, and we'll bring that back up in a minute. Okay, so what do you guys have out there that you use that is a signature strength that you can use for leadership? Teamwork. That's a great one, Joseph. Kindness, of course, right? Kindness is a great one, because we're going to talk a little bit later about whole person growth, and how, you know, that's a kindness trait of not focused just on the person in front of you as an employee or an employer, but, you know, really thinking about how kindness is just concern for the human in front of you, right? Gratitude is a great one, Chris. And then honesty. Thank you, Marcy. And honesty is a tough one for me, because I'm really, if you look at my 5 voices personality style, I'm really into relational harmony, and I have a really hard time communicating tough things to people if I don't think they're going to take it well, and I can take responsibility for the fact that maybe I don't always communicate well, but also that, you know, relational harmony is maybe more important for me than just honesty, right? Good, Steve. That's a good one. Trust is a great one. Trust. We're going to talk about trust in here in just a moment. Love of learning is fantastic, right? So, and you can use love of learning, Laura, as a tool to engage with other people, because you can be really curious about their lives and the things that they're interested in. And it's a great way to build relationships with folks. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing all those. So one simple application of this tip is really just to start noting your own use of strengths with other people. So, you know, print out the report that you got back, or that email that you got from the VIA Institute, and just start noting the fact that, hey, oh, like I was using my signature strengths a lot today in my work, and oh, these ones are lower for me on my list of classifications, but I was still using those a good bit. And all the strengths, there's no strength that's better than any other strength. It's just, it's a different mix for each of us, right? And there's 5.1 million different versions, literally, of what those top 5 can be for us based on based on our own makeup. Excuse me. So remember, those top 5 strengths should feel authentic, natural, effortless, energizing, right? So they should be things that make you feel really good, real easy for you to do, some flow state in there too. Okay, so on to tip number 2, and this is still related to strengths. Sorry, wrong slide there. But note your own strengths, and we talked about that. And then tip number 2 is to note the strengths in other people. And again, you can do this at home. If you have kids at home, a spouse at home, a partner at home, note the strengths that they have in there. Get them to take the survey and get them to start recognizing their own strengths. And that's the beauty of this positive psychology piece. It's built into the name, is it's positive, right? It's not focused on the things that we're not good at, right? It's focused on being really powerful in the things that we're really strong at and recognizing those gifts. So get your team to take those, note the strengths in other people, and then you can point them out, even if you just note just a strength that they're doing, like perseverance. Like, I really appreciate you struggling through your homework to do that. Hey, I really appreciate you working through all the challenges to help our virtual team become a virtual team if you're working with IT folks. So you have the ability to really celebrate those strengths in other people. All right, so make sure that you share those with other people. If you see people putting those in action, and be specific about it too. Use some of those examples that I talked about. Choose to note the positives and choose to note those positives frequently. Well, how frequently? No, that's tip number 3. Check your ratio. So, a ratio, and what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about what's called the Losado ratio, developed by Marcel Losado. And the ratio is 5 positive comments or 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative interaction that you have to have. We all have to have negative interactions with people to some degree, right? How negative we choose to make those interactions is on us. But when we think about this, 5 to 1 is the ideal ratio, right? And what they've done with this research, it's really interesting, is they've looked at companies and they've looked at the communication in those companies in the form of emails and internal newsletters and other internal documents. And from that, they can determine the Losado ratio kind of within that community of how often they're positively communicating and how often it's negatively. And the trick on this is at 2.9 to 1, so almost 3 to 1, companies that were below that ratio and had a really negative, high negativity to their ratio were companies that did not flourish. And the ones that were above 3 were ones that financially did well. So it has implications there, and it has implications in relationships as well. It's the same ratio, that 2.9 to 1, for relationships or for married couples that had a Losado ratio that was measured in their communication with each other and their behaviors towards each other, that it was lower than 3 to 1, 91% divorced, right? So there's really significance to just this positivity that you need to bring in. And positivity is such a buzzword, and I don't even like that I used it, but having these positive ratios to our lives. So remember, before you send that text, and we're not talking about being intoxicated necessarily, just be really cautious right now. People are on edge and they're really anxious and they're really nervous right now. This is your team members. These are the people that you work with, the people that you supervise, or the people that you report to. It's your team members at home, right? And it's the people in your community. Everybody's on edge a little bit more, so just really work on increasing that Losado ratio and keeping it really close to 5 to 1. Now, if you go crazy over the top with it, and we all know people that are just super positive all the time, and they're 13 to 1, well, the effect isn't the same. So it's okay to have the negative comments, but just think about that. That 5 to 1 is the really important ratio. That should be part of our culture, right? And when we have that ratio is really high, then our teams can feel safe and feel trusted, and have the ability to react, not to react to what's going on. They don't have to be defensive. They can innovate. They can take risks. They can trust that the people around them are there for their best interests, right? And it's a big part of trust. Really great book by Paul Zak, and I'll reference him a couple times in the rest of our presentation. So same thing with kids, right? This Losado ratio of 5 to 1 is important, and I was a foster parent in the past, and the way that they framed the Losado ratio back then was making deposits. So think about, the relationships that you have with other people, like being a bank account. And for every time you make a positive contribution, you're putting in money. That's a deposit that you make in the account. And then every time you have to make a withdrawal and have a negative comment, you're pulling a little bit out, but the idea is to have way more going in than you pull out, as with most bank accounts. Okay, so choose your words wisely, right? And keep that ratio in mind. All right, let's talk about tip number 4. Tip number 4 is ooze trust. And I want you to ooze it, right? Like I want it coming out of all of your pores. And the science behind trust is really simple. It comes down to two things. Can I get some LOLs, please? Now, it's there's all sorts of people that we don't trust inherently, right? Used car salesmen and telemarketers. And for me, the kind of people that I don't trust are people that smile before 9 a.m. I've been having a hard time getting up. You can hear this cough that I have. And so I've been kind of working my way through that. And thank you for the thumbs up, Shannon. Um, but we have people that we do and do not trust, and trust is really important. All right, so get ready to chat me up. So open up your chat box. We all know these people. Yes, Steve, people that get up early in the morning. Happy morning, people. Laura has a problem with that as well. Okay, so here's a question for you. What percentage of employees indicate trust is the number one issue in their workplace? So take your guess here between A, 25%, B, 45%, C, 75%, and D, 110%. Jade says C, 75%. Good. Joseph says B. Allison says B. That's the 45%. Shannon says C. Good. Chris says C, 75%, right? Steve, and then D. Laura says 110% with an LOL. Thank you, Laura. All right, the correct answer is a blank screen. There it is, 45%. So 45%, this is a poll done of employees. So this is employees, and these aren't people in managerial or supervisor roles. Now, when they went back and did the same survey with people that were in those supervisory roles or those managerial roles, the number went to 55%. So blend those two numbers together, and you're looking at a number that's around 50% of like the number one issue in a workplace is trust. So building trust is really important, and there's some really great work out there on trust by Ken Blanchard. He's the one that came up with this model of ABCD. And we'll walk through that really quickly. A stands for able, and so are you capable, competent of doing the work that you're hired to do. B, are you believable? So can people trust that you're going to act with integrity? We've all had that greasy salesperson that you're just like, oh, I don't trust you at all. Like you're not listening to me. You can usually get triggered by people the wrong way. C is connected, so caring about other people. We're going to mention, and I've said it before, whole person growth, and that's a really important part of that. And we're going to focus on C here a little bit. But first, let's talk about D, which is dependable. So being honoring your commitments, and that's to everyone. That's to the colleagues that work on the same level with you. It's the people you report up to. It's the people that you serve, your clients, all of it. Dependability is a really big part of that. And this is the quote that really focuses in on that whole person growth is when we really have people focused on that C part of the Blanchard model, then they have trust, right? We know that person is really connected. They care about us. They're invested as us as a human being and not just as an employee, right? And that's the significance. Like we can give people trainings on being a better salesperson or being better at navigating conflict, but we have to think about the other parts, the stuff that's about the other part of the person in front of us that's not just the employee. All right, so focus on that whole person growth. And that's what Paul Zak calls it. And, they have a life outside of work, and they have their next job that they're probably thinking about. Not everyone's staying with the same company for the next, 30 years of their lives because pensions aren't a thing and mobility is way easier than it was before. And so, be thinking about the fact that like when someone comes into you, they're coming to learn some things and they probably want to learn and grow within the company or grow and move to some other role that's fulfilling for them. So be ready to support them in finding what their next job is and helping prepare them for that while they serve you in what they're doing now. And so their flourishing is, it's in all aspects of that PERMA, right? So it's all of those. And so really helping people understand what it is that makes them tick and how you can serve those. And you can see at this point, I think that they're all sort of intertwined. So ask questions about people's lives and really being invested in that whole person that's in front of you. In our last our virtual training, we talked about ACR, which is active constructive responding. It's a great tool for really diving deeper in with people and feeling what they're feeling and really connecting with them. And again, when you do that, you're having those positive interactions, and there's your Losada ratio going up towards that 5-to-1 where it needs to be. Okay, so what does supporting people look like? Well, being supportive is a big tip, and So what does it look like? Well, support has three aspects, and we're going to talk about those. The three aspects are tangible. So, supporting someone by taking them to a doctor's visit, or taking them to the grocery store, or helping them with an errand, an actual tangible thing that you do for someone. Or emotional, so being a really good listener, reassuring people when they're in times of stress, helping them generate solutions if they're asking for them, if they're asking for advice. And then supporting perspective on things and helping people really kind of frame what's going on around them, or even reframing that. That's emotional support. And then informational is something like, financial advice, or if you have expertise in a certain area, sharing that expertise with other people and being supportive in that sense. And when we have the ability to support people, we spend a lot of time doing this in our office settings because of this physical contact. And it's a lot easier when we're in an office space and we have, as Jamil Zaki says here, that we have these little one-off moments, right? These little goof-off moments and these little touches with people that are really actually important. And this is also validated by the work of Dan Buettner, who's the author of Blue Zones of Happiness. And he said that, the people that go through our lives with these little interactions in our daily life, with cashiers, someone in the elevator, someone that we pass in the hallway, that those actually help us measure our days better and more satisfied when we look back on them. So those little moments are important. So now we're doing these virtual meetings and everyone hops on and we just jump right into the content and we just do our thing instead of creating that space. And I'm bad at this, right? Like I'm someone that likes to be productive, and I go to a co-working space quite a bit, and I have to build in recognition and time for the fact that, like, I haven't seen a lot of these people, and people want to talk and they want to hear what's going on in my life, and I should be asking about what's going on in their lives. And it's hard to do in this virtual world now. So if you're someone that's organizing meetings and conference calls, create some space for those connections. And praise and recognition is definitely a form of support, and there's ways to do it well, and there's ways to do it really poorly, right? And here's an example of maybe how recognition gone wrong. Here's your performance review. Okay. So, and by the way, annual performance reviews have been shown to be really ineffective. That feedback needs to be a regularly occurring thing versus just an annual thing. All right. So here's the problem: is that she was on vacation for 2 weeks. So that's a fail, I would say, in recognition. So let's talk about recognition in a good way. And this comes from research from a lot of different folks, that there's a lot of common elements of this, right? So give people feedback immediately after a goal is met. You can have regular times where you do feedback with people. You can do something at every staff meeting or in an annual meeting where you provide, the awards and people get their certificates. That's fine. Make sure you do those things as part of recognition, but also do them right when they happen, right? And you have your peers, if you can. That's our second bullet on there. Provide that recognition. They should be the ones giving that. They're the ones that know the people better than maybe you do as a supervisor of a larger team. The owner of the company, it's really great if that person gives someone an honor, but they maybe don't really truly understand the individual that's in front of them. And so it can't be really tangible and specific as it's shown in that third bullet there. The public part of that third bullet, you have to feel your people out, right? So some people would be completely embarrassed by being publicly recognized because one of their character strengths might be humility. And so for them to be honored, and they just don't feel good about that because they want to put all of that on the people and part of their team that really made it happen, right? And so be cautious about the public part of it. Do it in small group settings. If you know that person's character strength is humility. It should be unexpected by the honoree. So try to do something that's not just at your regular staff meeting, right? That doesn't that's not meeting the unexpected part, and immediately after the goal, right? It's not hitting on either of those. And make sure that it's personal. Make sure you talk about what it is that they did and how they use their strengths and how they use their unique contributions to the community or to your workplace to make that happen. Okay, so and public recognition is really important, and this comes from Paul Zach's book, Trust Factor. It's a really great way to celebrate excellence in the workplace and to show what that's modeled like, right? Positive role modeling on what excellence looks like. Okay, so the praise people. So there's your support coming back again. So praise the people and show recognition. Encourage sharing. So create that time during your meetings for people to talk about things, to do those little water cooler moments that aren't happening right now because people aren't around a water cooler and they probably shouldn't be sharing it anyway. Get people to share recipes, the books they're reading, what games they're playing, what they're watching on TV. Um, Share little things from their own lives on acts of kindness. My sister shared a beautiful photo of someone that's a professional photographer walking around their community and getting everyone in their communities to sit on their front porches as she comes by, and she takes a family photo of them and then shares that with the entire community. Like, what a great way to use your gifts and your talents to support your community in a time when people really could use something just nice and positive to celebrate. And then, of course, the last part of there is listen. Ask really good questions, open-ended questions. One of my favorite phrases is "tell me about," and then fill in the blank. Tell me about your weekend. Well, they can tell you whatever they want about their weekend at that point, and you're just opening the door there, right? And then tease out, those conversations in 5 voices. There's some voices that are really strong and dominant, and some that are not, and they really need to be teased out. So you have homework. Yes, and homework doesn't get done like any of these methods here, right? You actually have to do the work. Again, knowledge without action is kind of pointless. So use these tools. You'll get a PDF from me with all the tools after this, and you can start using those and sharing those tools with other people, because sharing is important. All right, and then one final piece on chatting me up, and I hope you'll jump in for this last little bit, is open the chat up, and I'm going to do that right now. Is how confident are you on using these, right? And let's come right to here, and how confident are you? Are you like a teen school awkward dance confident with this? Or are you so confident that you're doing your Sudoku in pen? And here's the trick with all this stuff, is that it's about getting better at these things over time. These aren't things that we maybe do not very naturally right now. It's going to feel uncomfortable, and discomfort is an opportunity for growth. So lean into these moments, and hopefully you feel like you can start doing this more and more. And Paul Zak says it really well. He says that there's just no optimal organizational culture. Just get better. Just be clear on what you're trying to achieve, what the condition looks like, and just get better at it over time. Because if you're just 10% better at it at the end of the month, it's still 10% better, right? Okay, so some more tools that are available for you. AnthonyPoponi.com/toolbox, that's on the right there, will give you some great tools and resources just to improve your positivity. And then what's coming out really soon is on the left there. It's called Focus on the 40. It's my workbook. It's a self-paced transformational guide. It dives way deeper on all the stuff we've done. It gives you a chance to be really introspective. And then typically when I offer this out there, I'll be offering it with a coaching session on top. So at the end, when you finish your walk through this workbook, you get a chance to chat with me, and we can point you towards more resources and tools that you need to keep growing in what you're doing. So that's coming out soon. Pay attention to that. You'll see emails. And I'm here. If you really want to talk more about this, I'm happy to do it now. Free 30-minute coaching session is something that I offer anyone. Love to hear about what you're using, what you could use more of, walk you through your own strengths too, and really start diving into those. And if you got a team, I do small team workshops where we have more time focused in on the individual team, where we do some group things together and really get the team talking about what their signature strengths are and what some of these tools and tips are. And then there's plenty of times for introspection and for the team to start looking internally at themselves, again, so they can lead themselves and then help start leading other people. And we'll come back to the Q&A in just 1 second here. I just want to say thank you to the Gunnison Country Chamber of Commerce. Get Happy Hour is coming. I'll give you the date here soon. It's probably coming before the end of April. And I wanted to thank the Gunnison Country Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this series. And the Gunnison Bank and the Crested View Bank are sponsoring Get Happy Hour. So pay attention for that coming. And if you know somebody that can support what I'm doing here, help me get it out to the world, please share this with the world. I want all this content to get into the hands of people that need it. And if you know some people that would be interested in sponsoring future trainings like this, I would love to see that. So please reach out to me. And I'm keeping these all free because I really do want these resources to be available to people regardless of price. Because I know right now that finances are tough, right? So I'm going to stick around. I just want to say a quick thank you, and I'm going to open up the chat, and I'll start looking at some of those questions on here. And while you're putting your points in here, I'll walk you through the gratitude exercise while we're doing that. And I'm going to look at some of these. But first, on this gratitude exercise, since it was something that 2 people asked about, I set my phone every day to 12:34. And at 12:34 p.m., it's called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at 12:34 p.m. Every day, I say 5 things I'm grateful for. Now, the science says that you don't necessarily have to do this every single day, so don't worry if you miss a day or two. But it's called the 3 good things exercise, or it's called Hunt for the Good Stuff. And so every day I just find 5 things, and they don't have to be big things that you're grateful for. Like today, the weather was really nice outside. I got a brisket on sale. Those sort of things that can just be little moments that help turn the lens that you look life at as just in more of a positive way. So that's what it's called. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you have questions about that, just let me know. Okay, so I'm going to look at the chat questions and see what we have here. Thank you. If you need to depart, I understand. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you bringing me into your virtual life. And I hope you stay in touch and look for an email from me. So looking forward to the quiz and using your strengths. Good, Allison, keep using that. Fearing hubris is a good thing. I had someone say that I had hubris, and I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or not the other day. I think I'm a risk taker. I'm an entrepreneur, so I took that as a positive way. Thank you, Joseph, for the kind words, and thank you, Steve, for the kind words. Yeah, it takes time to grow a team for sure. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate the kind words. Let's get me in with your team at some point. I'd love to really be working with your group. I'm going to look back and see if there's any other questions on here, and I'll check the Q&A box. And you guys know how to get a hold of me just in case there's something that comes up at some other point. You're very welcome, Shannon. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for being here. Okay, I'm going to hang out for just a few minutes and see if there's questions, but otherwise, class is dismissed. Hey. Oh, thank you, Marcy. I appreciate that. Ooh, how do you overcome habits of not wasting time? That's maybe a little outside the scope of things that I talk about specifically, but patterning your day is a really important thing. Tim Ferriss has some really good tools on that, and just really focus on the things that would make the most out of your day. His technique is part of a journaling exercise that you do with meditation, and the journaling follows the meditation, and you write down 3 things you're grateful for, and you can do this at bed at night too. It's a great way to kind of finish your day. Is to have a little journal beside your bed. But anyway, with the meditation practice is meditation plus journaling. When you journal, 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things that describe who you are in a positive way. So think about those signature strengths that you have, and then think about what would make today great. And I would say couple those with what do you have to do to make it great, right? It requires that action piece. So, for me, it's about habit forming, about for me, distractions. Like one of the things that I have to do is turn off the notifications on this thing sometimes, put this thing away or somewhere else. And if I sit down to work on something like these presentations, they take a lot of time and they take a lot of focus and really kind of dive in deep. So I have to work on minimizing the distractions in my life to do that. Set goals. There's a great goal setting approach out there called WOOP, WOOP. You can look at that about creating goals for yourself for the short term and for the long term. And goal setting is really important towards happiness and positive emotions. So if you don't set goals in your life about what you're trying to achieve, definitely work on that. And when you set goals for yourself, like I don't have what I would call great memory. One of the things that I do is I set goals, and my goal for the year is my goal list for the year is called the Big Damn To-Do List. And so I really work on building that, when I have a lot of time to construct and think about things, big projects that I want to work on for the year. And then what's really interesting is, again, I said I don't have great memory, and I kind of put that to the side, that document, and then I come back and check on it quarterly. And I'm really impressed with how much I've stayed on track. So I think this thing starts picking up on those cues and kind of sending you down that path. And of course, if you believe in energetics and law of attraction, you start attracting those things to your life. So think about that. For some people, responding to emails is a really important part of their job to kind of keep other people flowing in their work and allowing them to continue their progress. For me, my inbox is something that I should stay away from a little bit if I'm going to try to focus on what I'm doing. So there's a lot of work on that. Tim Ferriss is, again, a great resource. And I saw another question pop up. See if I know how to access those. I need Skyrat. That's a really good question, Chris, and we should probably talk about that one offline a little bit more. But buy-in from your team members. It really depends on what you're talking about. Buy-in towards what? Culture? If you're still out there, and if you're not, we can talk about this at some point in a session. But yeah, it's. I think it's hard because the stuff is kind of uncomfortable for a lot of people, so they don't always get what it's like, you know. But let's talk through your question more specifically, and I can give you some more tips. Cool. Well, we are 5 minutes over on time. Thanks for sticking around, for those of you that stuck around. And thank you for all your chats and your LOLs and your interaction. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.